Zopa is a financial services firm aimed at the retail market and ordinary investors and borrowers. What they do differently from a bank is basically they cut out a lot of the intermediaries. So you're dealing almost directly with a borrower and a lender, and the firm just acts as an intermediary that packages loans for both sides of the transaction. So they're sort of like an eBay for borrowing and lending money. And we were interested in them because they're one of the first firms of its kind in the UK, quite large, quite successful. And we're using a new internet-based technology and new research methods to shape their products, to find customers, to create an alternative to basic high street banking. When we first started looking at these sorts of firms, they're known as peer-to-peer lenders. And peer-to-peer was a term that we're familiar with from software. Basically things like Pirate Bay file sharing, where you're part of a computer network where there is no central hub, no server, and I've got a file on my computer that you can access, you've got a file on your computer that I can access, and we share things, sometimes legally, sometimes not. So we were really familiar with that technology and those communities, and how they talked about themselves, how they thought about themselves, what they valued. And we were thinking that that would just sort of naturally carry over to a peer-to-peer financial services firm. And what we found was that that story had changed. That when Zopa started in 2006, the people who were familiar with file sharing, who were very technologically sophisticated with computers, were their initial customer base. And were very interested in the sorts of software tools that gave them a lot of control over what they were doing. But what Zopa found, and that got them to completely really change their product in some fundamental ways and to change their message, was one, that's not a really huge demographic. I mean, there just aren't that many people who are highly, highly computer savvy and who also want to borrow and lend money on a significant basis. They also found that people were using their services and their tools almost as a way to play games with each other. So they were competing to see who could get how much money loaned out as fast as possible. And they were even undercutting themselves in order to kind of stick it to the next person sometimes, or not get the best deal, but get their money loaned out fast. And really taking advantage of the software tools, but not in a way that either maximized their own financial returns, or that made it fair for people who weren't highly sophisticated computer users who just wanted to put in some money, get a good interest rate, and either take it back out again or reinvest it. So what they ended up doing to grow their business spectacularly over the course of the past 2 years was exactly the opposite of what we thought we would see and what we thought our recommendations were going to be. Because we had thought that, what users want is transparency. They want to be able to know what's going on. They want to be able to get under the hood and play with the parts themselves. And we found, as Zopa found, that really wasn't the case. And that the key to their huge takeoff in business was simplifying their product and what we call black boxing. Putting it all into a solid package where here, you buy this, here's the price, it'll do just what it says on the tin, and if you really want to know more, you can find out, but you don't have to. You can just borrow or lend, here's the product, here's the return, here's what you get, and be done with it. And that simplicity, along with the financial guarantees they provided, were really profoundly popular. And along with that popularity came a big shift in their user base, in that the people who were the hardcore software geeks felt left out. They felt that they didn't have the tools they used to have, that they didn't have the attention that they used to have from the company. But they encountered this entire new market of, on the lending side, people who were a little bit older, who were thinking about retirement in a few years, who had some extra money saved away, who were looking for a good rate. And on the borrower side, people who just wanted to be able to go to one place and get a price quote and not have a lot of hassle. So the demographic changed, particularly on the lender side, to older, maybe a little less technologically comfortable. And in working with that audience and figuring out how to appeal to them, they had to change their software tools and their website over time. They collect a lot of data on their users, from what their patterns, when they click through what on the site, how long they spend on each page, where they get hung up, when people tend to call in and ask for help because they don't understand. And they reiterate and redesign constantly. So their website is constantly changing, their message is fairly steady but refining, the presentation is changing, the level of tools, how you see the data, because they started off just sort of having a really primitive sort of Excel spreadsheet of, here's what's loaning out, here's what rate you have, we're done. And when I started working with them, I was like, it seems like there's a lot more that you could do with data visualization, with making this information a little more user-friendly for the kinds of users you're attracting. And they were in fact working on that, and over time they've been using both the information they can gather through their technologies and the technologies of monitoring and working with their users to refine the design to be something where somebody who isn't a financial professional or isn't a software professional can get on, get some answers fairly intuitively, and feel confident in what they're doing. So we have been watching that process as it's evolved over the past year and a half, and looking at how information access and design changes kind of feed back into each other in a loop to refine what they're doing to speak more closely, more effectively to the customers that they now have. So after working with Zopa for this period and watching their focus on appealing to a demographic that they sort of describe as professionals nearing retirement who live outside London, we had been doing work with some of the local community up in Lancashire who are interested in alternative finance. And we were wondering whether the sorts of information and answers and questions and values and what people wanted from a financial product, from a software product, might be different up here in Lancashire than they would be outside London. So working with the Brunel team, and Jennifer Ferrer from Brunel worked with us to run 3 workshops here in Lancaster. And we did one in the Quaker Friends Meeting House, we did one in a co-housing community just outside of Lancaster, and we did one in a pub in downtown Lancaster. And got some fantastic, fantastic information that helped us put what we were hearing from Zopa in context. And we were hearing some of the same things about people feeling like they had lost control over their money, that the complexity of financial services today, the complexity of financial information caused a lack of trust and a sense of a lack of control. And that those two were really closely related. That one of the things that was attractive about buying local and shopping local that came up in some of the work on the Bristol Pound was trust and information control. So if I want to know what a merchant is doing, if I want to know if someone is on the level, I can go to their business. I can meet them, I can talk to them, I can talk to friends who know them, they have a local reputation in the community. I've got information, I've got control. Whereas with most financial instruments, even lending through a high street bank, you don't know where your money is, you don't know where it's going. You've got pages and pages and pages of legalese to wade through, which is there for a good reason, to protect you, but it still can lead to that sense of loss of control and loss of trust. So one of the central challenges that both sides of this project have been facing, Zopa and the Bristol Pound, have been how to answer the questions that people up here in Lancashire were asking about how can I have a sense that I trust what my money is, where it's going, who's got it, and what they're doing with it. And we've seen in this project 2 different technological answers to that same set of problems.